All right. I am in the studio with one of my OGs, one of my closest friends and clients, Vivek. And we are talking about home ownership journey directly from my past clients. And I was super excited to chat with you today. So thank you for coming on set. And let me give, let me step back. And let me give you a chance to tell the people who you are.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks, first of all, for having me here. This is actually my first podcast in real. I've been on many, many podcasts, but it's all been very virtual. So this seems very surreal. Feels like a celebrity. So I appreciate that.
Oh, no problem. I thought you meant I'm the celebrity. You're the celebrity.
I'm the guest, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, no, I'm let's see, I was a computer engineer, moved to Chicago from India for my undergrad. Since then, I've been in the Chicagoland area for about 25 years, right? And yeah, eventually got a job, settled in Chicago, met my gorgeous wife, who's a dentist. And then from there on, we decided, actually, I'd bought a place with you prior to that, right? Which was kind of my bachelor pad where I lived.
It's a great place.
And still have. Right?
I know.
Yeah. And then, of course, I met Luda, who's my wife right now. And then we moved into a second place. And now finally we moved into our dream home, etc. But I own, I'm an entrepreneur, right? I owned 2 companies and now I own one. I just sold one of the companies. I'm currently working on a software tech company in the dental industry. Super psyched about that as well. So life is super busy. Got 2 kids. A wife has a dental practice. So between like 2 or 3 businesses and 2 kids, life is pretty hectic, but love it as well. So it's been a great life so far.
Thank you for that. Thanks for coming in. And do you remember, because I remember our first meeting ever.
Yes, absolutely. I think Home Scout.
Home Scout, that's right.
Right. I was walking through.
You were literally a walk-in.
Right. I was a walk-in, and I don't think I was actually out there to like look for real estate or something like that. Just walking by, decided to walk in and met you. So
now look at you.
And then
you're welcome for your whole life.
Yeah. All credit to Greg for this cool life that I have.
Such a successful man now.
What would have happened had I just walked back?
Don't think that way.
Yeah. So no, I remember, man. It was a fun time, and
I literally it's crazy because like my memory in general is terrible, but like I visibly remember you were sitting up front, and it was I don't know if I was on call or like what was going on, but it was like I was there, and I specifically remember our meeting, and the way that I've always kind of like grown my business, right? It's all relationship based, right? And man, did we have a great like early years relationship, just like running around, going crazy.
Hey, when we were single, we went speed dating too. So I don't know if I can say that.
That was my one and only speed dating experience.
Right? Yes.
I'm telling you, we've had a lot of fun experiences together. I mean, I still remember us, at the clubs and the bars, and I think I was jumping on your back, and it just
I have photos of that. Yep.
Yeah, it was the journey is incredible, right? Because it's like you were pre-Vesta even, and we're talking like what 15 years at this point. And was Irving your first condo ever? Like was your first home ever, right?
Yeah.
So looking back at it, because now you're like basically like a seasoned home buyer, right? And there's a lot of like one of our main bread and butter here at Vesta is first-time home buyers, right? So what I really want to kind of lean into is like your experience, if you can go back to that beginning stages of like how did the progress, like how did the journey happen for you when it came to like why did you decide to buy, right? How did you, if you remember, analyze what was right for you? Like I'd love to kind of just think about what your initial stages were.
Yeah, I mean, I to be perfectly candid, I try to analyze very little, right? Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. It allows me to be a very quick decision maker, right? But at the same time, I don't remember analyzing too much. I just remember being in a pretty good, comfortable state in my life, right? And I was rooming with Aman, who you know really well.
Aman, man.
Right?
OG. I miss that guy.
Me too. But, at that time, I think it was just like right at that age, I think I was like maybe 27 or 28 years old. It's probably the time where I kind of go on my own and and so instead of moving again, it was just like, all right, let's buy a place. And at that time, this was coming right. The real estate market had started dipping, right? This was around 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
Right? And nobody knew how far that's going to fall, right? But it seemed like, okay, a decent price, right? And you just somehow compare it with rents and everything. And Chicago has been very, very affordable, right, as a city. And so when you just kind of mathematically calculate, like, yeah, you know what, you can just afford this place, have your place, etc. I love that building
Yeah.
that we were in. Very high amenity building. I still don't understand why it's not a very, very popular and well-known building because it's got a great outdoor pool, it's got a great 24-hour gym, those grilling stations, etc. It's got a basketball court, great lobby. Everything seems so good, right? Valet parking and everything for a very, very affordable price.
Right.
So that it was just a very like, all right, time to move, time to not be codependent with my buddy, right?
Yeah.
And if we're going to move, let's see what's out there, right? And then I'll say this: it's very, very difficult for anybody to make me say something that I don't really believe, but I do believe that you're one of the best ever.
Thanks, man.
And the reason I say that is because your follow-up is impeccable, right? Like I could rely on it from instantly, meaning that if you're talking about comms, I knew that we'll have comms as soon as you get some time, etc. It wasn't something that you would say and forget about it, right? It wasn't something that I'm going to remind you saying, hey, Greg, I thought you were going to send me comms. You're on top of it, and the zeal and the passion that's there, it's still there. Even when we were looking for our dream home right now, right? We probably went on a lot of goose chases as well over the past couple of years when we were thinking we're going to buy a place. We never did, but it was still the same, right? Like as soon as we're looking for places, you're on it. You've got a good market. For our new home that we had, there were a couple of problems. When the inspection was happening, we were in Italy, and you went out there, right, to talk to the guy, etc. So. But yeah, you made the process really easier as well, right? And so at that time, it was just the next thing to do in a matter of growing up in my life,
No, and thank you for the kind remarks. Appreciate that. If you can remember, right? So like you were a walk-in, right? So like kind of now it's a lot easier to like look for brokers. There's like, I don't know, 16,000, 17,000 of us just running around the Chicago area alone, right? If somebody looking back at it, right? And our relationship is so important for the success of, your real estate, the success and all of that and working through and finding out, what you like. Real estate is an industry where you don't know until you know, and unfortunately, a lot of people find out, that they should have not used this or they should have done this already after the fact. I think one of the places people really miss is who to use as a broker for them, right? If you can go back and be like, all right, if I was looking for, like, let's say like you're moving to a new city, now that you know what you know, how would you look for the right broker out there?
Oh, it's a tough question, man. I think the number one thing I would probably do is the things like follow up and doing what you said are so important for me, right?
Yeah.
Because I am a very unorganized or disorganized, whatever the word is, person, right? Meaning that I don't have good mental notes and I'm forgetting things, etc. Right? So when someone is like really precise, right, and that's helpful. What it shows me is this person is solid. Right? Like this person is engaged. This is their profession. It's not like a part-time broker type of a thing where, right? Like we make the sale great. This is career, right? So you know the area really well. And just in life, I really like people who are really like, masters of their craft. And when you see the masters of their craft, it's all detail driven, right? Like a lot of things are just built up of a lot of small little things. It's not just one big thing, but they do the small little things really, really well, right? So that's probably one thing that I would say. And as you know, right, like somebody could be an industry veteran or somebody could be just starting out, but this person starting out after 1 year is already really good because sometimes people who have 10 years of experience don't have 10 years of experience. They have 1 year of experience 10 times, right?
I say that all the time.
Yep. And so in this particular case, that's kind of what I'm looking for, right? I'm also looking for someone that's very, very conscientious and ethical, right? Meaning that they're not looking to make the sale, they're looking to find the best place for this. Right. They're also looking for patience, right? Because I do feel that sometimes there's a tendency for, and I can kind of only speculate, right? But there are probably enough buyers out there, or prospective buyers, that just cannot make up their mind, and you're just on a goose chase for like long, long time, but they haven't pulled the trigger, right? But if I know that I'm serious, right? Then, and it is typically one of the biggest purchases that people do, right? Like the house is the biggest purchase, but if their bigger purchase than the current house is typically another bigger house, right? And so if it's such a big purchase, it needs to be treated as an important decision, and the broker needs to be very patient and understanding that, okay, maybe all the 9 things, the 10 things that a particular client is looking for, 9 things are really good, but that one thing is just a deal breaker, right? Because it dwarfs all the other 9 things, etc. Right? So those are probably the things that I would look for, right? Beyond that, do I, right? Like and it's just me, and maybe it's one of those things, maybe I don't know what I don't know, right? But if the person is not very, very familiar with this particular building that we're looking to, right? Because it's X, Y, and Z, etc. Maybe that to me is not as important, because I feel like we also have to do our own due diligence, and how much is the reserves if it's a condo building, or if it's a single family home, what is the crime rate and all that stuff. That's something that I can do, and there's enough publicly visibly stats that you can typically find.
Yeah.
So it's less about, like, knowledge is very important, undoubtedly, right? But there's other factors that are going to trump those, right? And that's probably what I gravitate towards.
Okay. No, that's awesome. And like, now that you've bought numerous real estate and numerous pieces of real estate, right? What are the factors that now you look for, or you were looking for like the true value drivers? Like, if somebody's looking to buy their first house, what should they be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, and that is very, very, like, personal for everyone, right? Like, so it's like, if I look for me, right? And we've bought 3 residential homes. Actually, Luda's bought a 4th residential home for her parents that, was, and then we've bought, these 2 pieces of real estate property that were combined at the dental office, et cetera, right? But I think the first home I just bought because it looks like a good building. I want to be in a high rise, right? The second place was, location is, of course, like the most important thing, right? You have to get a good idea about where you want to live, right? And then, it's, again, some of those things where you have to somewhat mentally just know what is something that you can compromise on and what is something that you shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
In our second place that we looked at Hallstead, right?
Yeah.
I remember Luda walked into the place, right? And we were in the master bedroom, and the selling broker was right behind Luda, and Luda was looking at me, mouthing, right? And so I'm like, well, I mean, thank you. Our negotiations is gone now. Right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But she just fell in love with the layout of the place, right? It was just a very wide layout, et cetera, and that was good enough for us, right?
Right.
Yeah. And it just turned out it was a Lincoln Park. It was a really good area. The thing that we had to compromise on is that we were on a very big street, so it was busy. But surprisingly, we liked it, meaning that it's, maybe it's just that we're city people, so there's a lot of noise outside. It doesn't bother us as much as it would somebody else, right? It just keeps it more lively, right? Right outside is the Kingston Mines, so which means at 3 a.m. there's still activity happening, right? We had decently soundproof windows and all that stuff, but beyond that, we really enjoyed that place.
So I will say that you guys are definitely, you take your time, right? When you were searching for all the pieces of real estate. I don't necessarily remember how long. I don't think it took us like a very long time to find the Irving Park, but like Hallstead, I remember we were looking for a long time. We were looking for, your last house. It was just it was a long process, right? But I remember Hallstead in particular, right? Even when we walked in for the first time, I knew that it was going to be replaced because you guys are entertainers, right? main living space is super important. And you walk in and it's like, I always talk about this. Look for the main value drivers, right? What are the things you can't change? And it was just this massive living and dining space, huge open concept kitchen. I was like, this is fantastic, right? And then you had the added benefits of the 2 big bedrooms and all of that good stuff. So I always preach about, look for main value drivers, right? Like the things that you cannot change. You can't grow a house. You can't give it more sunlight. You can't move it, right? But you can update finishes. And you guys have done some updating throughout the years, right?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah.
How do you find that process in regards to, like, would you say, looking back at it, would you have rather bought something up to the quality that you want? Or is it like, do you say, okay, cool, like if I had time and I had the ability, finding a good deal and then doing my own renovations, like what do you weigh one
Again, like, it's like, different people in different stages of life type of a thing, right? Like back then we had more time and less money, right? And at that time, the real estate market and construction wasn't mental like it is, right? The high costs and everything, right? So back then it made more sense to say, yeah, the floors we don't like as much. We don't like the finishes, etc., but we love the layout. And we knew that, getting a good value at that time is more important, because then we would spend the money to get the appropriate flooring and finishes, etc., which is what we did.
Yeah.
Right. And now, as you know, the latest place that we looked in, the busy in life, right? So to deal with a home, renovation project is something that is just stressful for me right now, right? If somebody says, buy this place, it's great, but you're going to have to spend a lot of money and a lot of time and headaches with contractors and look at bids. I'm like, I'm just not in my life at that time to deal with that, right? So at this point in time, the place we looked at was just such a model-esque place, right? We walked in and it's like, it's all built the way that is our style at this time. So it just was like, at this point, and who knows what we paid for it was great value or premium or whatever, right? Like it's very difficult to predict how things are going to go.
It was an incredible value because I negotiated for you.
I love it. Okay. So, but at the same time, right? Like if someone said to us, you could get it for X dollars less because it wasn't built nice, but you can actually then spend the money and the time. It's like, we'd rather pay a little bit more to get the place that's already the way that we want to move in, so that we don't have to deal with it. So that's why I think it's just a very like personal, where you are in the stage of life and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think as we mature and we, have less time and, we are so keen on spending time with our kids and, we are higher income with whether our businesses are or whatnot. The way you value time changes dramatically.
For sure.
Right. So I'm just like, all right, well, if I could buy this and I could knock out $100,000 of overall cost if I would do this, but it's going to take me 6 months of my time.
Right.
It's like not even near worth it.
Right.
Right. Well, somebody's like, you can get $100,000 off. I'm like, but you're going to have to spend, all your weekends are done. You have to spend all this time because it's like you can't get something for nothing, right? So you got to give somewhere. So it's like people need to understand where it's like, what I'm seeing now in the market, like we were just talking, the market's crazy. But there's still a lot of product that sits. And the things that sit are actually homes that need work. And the reason is that people are willing to spend more money and even overpay because they want to, like for ready-made homes, because they're willing to up that cost for not having to deal with that headache.
Right.
It's the consumer dynamic and psychology is completely changed in that way.
I think probably two reasons, right? Number one, one thing is that the cost of renovating, et cetera, is pretty high. There's like lead times and all that stuff, right? So you kind of start factoring. It's like, oh man, I'm going to have to wait for 4 months before something even happens, right? But the one thing that I wanted to, when you said like, what is important to you about the broker and stuff like that, I think that's one thing I would say is very important for a broker, and in many different industries as well, is that you don't make the decisions in your mental frame of mind isn't based on what your mental frame of mind. You need to understand what the other person is thinking. Like for me, legitimately, time and stress are super important, right? Like I would rather at this point of time have less money than more stress, right? I already lead a stressful life. If you've got 2 kids and you've got a couple of businesses, you know that life is going to be stressful.
Right. Yeah.
It's given, right? And so for me, I want something to make it pretty easy, right? So I don't want someone to make the decision for me to say, look at this great value. It just needs some extra work. Yes, that's you thinking for me,
Right.
right? But for me, what is important is just I want to just walk in and move in and say, oh my God, this is the place, right?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Which I think brings a really good point where you have to be very clear and defined upfront with exactly who you are and what you need. And you got to find somebody that listens in the way where they don't bring you what you don't want, right? Because again, like your time is super valuable, right? So it's like you don't want to be wasting your time seeing things that won't work for you, right? So it's like at the end of the day, I feel like my job is twofold. It's A, to make your life easier, but 2, it's also to make you money, right? The way that I say to anybody that I work with is like, my number one job is to make you money. The way I do that is through investing in real estate, right? And it's a completely changed way because most people are like, well, I can sell you a home, I can show you houses. And I'm like, my number one goal is to make you money, and the vehicle I can do that through is real estate. And it's a small change,
Sure.
but it changes everything with the way you approach the entire process. How important is location to where you buy a house?
It is the number one thing, right? Because like for us, I don't know if you said, Vivek, you can live anywhere in the city or something like that, which is true for us right now and a lot of people who work from home, right? Like, yeah, fine, wherever, it doesn't matter, right? We don't have to be in the city of Chicago, etc. There's probably only 2-3 areas that I would say that we'll pick, right? Number one is schools. It just is the moment you have kids, that is where the defining factor becomes, right? And the number 2 is, right, like just the area and the crime and all that stuff, right? Like some of that stuff starts factoring into play, right? And so for us, it was like very clear. It's like Lincoln Park, and where we lived, we loved, right? And it just so happened that when we bought the place in Halstead, we had no idea about schools because we don't have kids or anything like that, right? But it just happens to be in the district of a really good school that our daughter goes to right now, which meant that literally when we were looking for now our new home, it was like a tiny 2-block section to say, right? So for us, it was super important. Anybody that has kids is going to be super important, right? And you know, the thing is, there's different vibes and cultures of different sub-pockets in Chicago, right? Like Bucktown and Wicker Park has a different vibe than Lincoln Park, that is a different vibe than River North, etc. So it almost like where you belong, right? I just loved Lincoln Park for a variety of reasons. It doesn't feel as like River Northy to me, like where there's more people that are probably like, I would say, and I'm generalizing it a little bit, but more on the upscale singles, high-rise buildings, amenities type of a thing, right?
Totally.
Versus Lincoln Park, where it's like more. Weirdly enough, I see the places in Lincoln Park to be much bigger and roomier. And I think part of it is just relic of like, you know, the lots were much bigger. So the houses that are built on there are just wider and more open versus some of the new construction that happens that, you know, is constricted on time. So I love Lincoln Park. And it's, you know.
So you guys are like, I feel the few and far between that have chosen city over suburbs. What gave you the push to the city versus the suburbs?
It's my wife, man. She's a city girl. I had no choice in that, right?
Literally, me and you are the same.
So
the boss.
For sure. And my thing was, I don't care where we live. Okay. It literally, like, I'm probably like the factors that are important for me, right? And it's almost like, you know, I'm going a little philosophical, right? But like as you grow and you mature and all that stuff, what things are important to you are very different. For me, what is important to me is just the relationships that you have with people and all that stuff, right? And the reality is that you could be very, very close to your friends in proximity, but far away, or you could be very far away and still just hang out and all that stuff, right?
Fair.
And so from me, like if we're 40 minutes away or 30 minutes away in some suburb, no big deal. We'll probably hang out with the same friends, or we'll, you know, etc. Right? So I didn't mind it. For me, like I was just telling Luda, you pick, right? Whether that's going to be Schaumburg or, you know, Burridge or, whatever, didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
I'm happy to, right? But her thing was very simple. We're going to be in the city, right? So I just had no choice. I mean, part of my time, I used to think like, I'd love to live a suburban life, right? Like, multiple car garage, which easy to get in, right? Like you can just kind of, or you don't have to believe like,
Yeah, right,
am I
yeah.
hitting something or not?
Exactly.
Right? So part of me
That's
was like,
boring. Easy's boring.
some people like it, right? Like,
Yeah, make it super difficult to park. Come on, you got to have adventure every day.
Well,
risk is everything.
Well, all right. So, I mean, part of me is like, okay, a lot of my friends are in the burbs and all that stuff, right? You just cruise into the nice parking. You never have to worry about wherever you're going, right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a charm to that with the backyard and hey, the kids are playing over there, etc. So I would be totally good with a life like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to love it or hate it. I've never lived that life, right? But I think I'd be totally okay with it.
Yeah.
I just think that it's Luda's thing.
Yeah.
Having said that, I love living in the city.
Cool.
Because very often when I'm working from home, right, sometimes I just want to get out. And I do that very often. Like there's this really, really like somewhat of a dingy place. It's an Indian restaurant on Lincoln. It's called Garib Nawaz. It's basically really, really cheap. I don't even understand how it's like ridiculously cheap place. And they've got this thing called Indian chai, which I love. It's just tea, right? And so very often at like, lunchtime, I'm just like, all right, I need to take a break. Just walk out, get myself a really cheap.
And that's so nice.
Right? Like, and those
you don't
are
have to
the
jump
things,
in the car, you can just walk.
Right. Those are some of the things that you can't do while you're in the burb. So I definitely enjoy this as well. So I'm glad that Luda made us stay here. And I think the other thing that really is helpful is that now when our daughter's going to school and our son is going to daycare, we've just met a lot of parents and stuff like that. So we become really friendly. And the good thing is, very often, it happened last night, right? I picked up our daughter from school and my son from daycare, and we're walking around with a couple of families. And I'm like, why don't you just come over? So they all just came over to our place. And then one of the kids just decided to stay over. They had a sleepover. But it was
fun.
like a very quick impromptu decision because we all live so like close to each other in proximity,
So to kind of finish up here, what would you say like your top points, top tips for buying like a pro and then also selling like a pro?
Yeah, I haven't sold anything yet, right? Like meaning...
You guys did Luda's house.
Yeah, Des Plaines property, right?
Yeah,
like but that was, I mean, so I could largely speak more on the buying perspective, right? Like clarity, right? Like it's one of those things where you just have to know yourself well enough. And if you have a partner, you have to know the partner well enough, right? And have very good clarity on what is it that you're looking for. Because the issue is, and probably happened with me as well, we just didn't know what we wanted well enough, right? So we're just looking at what's out there to see what appeals to us versus trying to figure out and say, well, this is what we like. And some things you're going to be very clear on, some things you're not going to be very clear on, right? Like, so for example, right, you could have somebody that says, school is the most important thing and we can't afford to send our kids to a private school. So now we need a area that's got really good public schools, right? That is a easier thing, right? Okay, so these are the places, especially if you're going to be in the city, are the areas that you can be in, right? And then other things are going to be a little fuzzier. You don't know until you see it, or you basically, see pictures of it to see, right? But you have to be able to like communicate that very clearly, right, to whoever that you're working with as well, right? Yeah, I mean, and again, I think the other thing that I would probably say is that maybe I'm just a little conservative financially, right? That's me personal, right? Like I am somewhat conservative financially. So my mind is always going, not just what we can afford today, but I'm also factoring in, all right, something's going to break at some point in time.
That's really important to like plan for that stuff, right? So financially being fiscally conservative, don't overbear yourself because life happens and you do not want to not be able to. First off, don't be house poor, and second off, don't even be anywhere close to house poor.
Right, exactly, right. And then when you have all these criteria, then it's pretty easy to like this is the area, this is what's affordable, etc., right? And this is what's important. And they just kind of, and at the end of the day, right, like it happens with most things, right? You walk into a place and you just know that, all right, this is the place you want, right? And then, it might not be the perfect place that checks off all the boxes, right? But it's just, your gut tells you that this is the place you want to live at, and which is what we did, right?
Yeah.
Like there was with that Halstead property, like I said, it just felt right away.
There's a little bit of magic in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So,
V, thanks for coming in, man.
yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Appreciate you, and looking forward to many more hangouts with the beautiful house and the beautiful family.
Yeah, for sure, man. And honestly, keep up the great work at Vesta, man. Your first Vesta office, I thought, was outside our place. We were very close, right? And now where I am, it's a
Now you're in my
it's an operation.
weird cave in the corner of my office, so that's cool.
Looks
So
good, man.
Still got it going on.
It's well done. The chairs are nice, at least. So,
I'm a man. Thank you so much.
you bet.
All right, that's great.